Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the Canyon. Welcome back to something we've done before, but something that we're gonna let me get this center. Something that we're gonna try out a little different, a little twist and a little tweak on the formatting. It came from the live stream. It came from the workbench, and I suffer from a problem, which is, for most of my life, a great amount of energy was spent just not documenting and not recording. So what we're going to do today, the topic du jour, is the SCX10 Pro. We've already built the VRD, we've already built Phoenixes, and pretty much you name it, and I have taken a hack at something that company has to offer. This is the first experience here in the Canyon of the 10 Pro. Those familiar, those long-term followers of the Canyon will be aware that when the 10 Pro was announced, so pre-release, I pre-ordered a 10 Pro, and then Axial full-blown horizoned it. And by horizoned, I mean they ruined it. So mine sat on back order for 13 weeks. And then I gave up, and at that point, I was so sour about the whole experience. I was like, no 10 Pro for me. I don't need it. I had quite literally moved on. Fast forward some indeterminate amount of time later, and a lovely supporter of the Canyon said, would you be interested in building a 10 Pro? And I was like, brother, you know me, man. I will build anything. If it shows up, I will build it, and then we will go through all the things. And as it had shown up, you can just buy one on Amazon now. I waited over 3 months and couldn't get one. So we're gonna find out. We're gonna find out on this day, and over a sequence of upcoming days, we're gonna find out, is it worth it? Because I am, as I told the gentleman who sent it in, I am 100% on board with building one of these, because we don't know until we know. So I need something to compare. The VRD where's the? I got a VRD box right here. So the VRD was released very shortly after the 10 Pro, and basically people just stopped talking about the 10 Pro. It was just VRD, VRD, VRD. But is that an anti-axial thing? Is that a Vanquish fanboy thing? What is the reason behind that? We also have the pre-cut, and I appreciate this on a deep level, Axial Body Set Pro. It is pre-drilled, pre-cut. It's not super attractive. It just needs to be painted. And I was told by the gentleman who sent it in, we have exactly what the Canyon desires in these instances, which is carte blanche. We can paint it in whatever way we see fit, and we will do that as such. So, looking at what we've got, that's an episode. Bag one is axles. Today we're going to do the axles. Ordinarily, I don't do this, but I don't show shock building, so I will probably build one. So in episode 2, I will build a shock, because building 4 shocks is the same thing 4 times. And then in that one, we will build the gearbox, which should be fun. Axial, in my estimation, is not a phenomenal designer of gearboxes. In the entirety of the Canyon fleet, prior to building this, there is a single axial gearbox being run in the entire fleet, which numbers over 40 vehicles. So I am no great fan of axial gearboxes. Capra, 10.3, Rift, don't like any of them. They've all been replaced. So that we'll do in episode 2. And then in episode 3, we will assemble the chassis. So we should be able to rock this out in 3 installments of indeterminate length, because the beauty of it is we're running the 10 Pro body, so the body just fits. We put the body mounts on. Whew. The side skirts are huge. We'll get to that later. We are going to build it. We're going to treat this like an RTR. The boxes are right here. I have said vocally, this is the best RTR on the market, because the VRD Carbon is a kit, but you build the kit exactly as it is, exactly as this picture would have it appear. You put a body on it, you put wheels and tires, you fit it with your selection of inexpensive or expensive electronics, and you drive it, and you don't need to do anything. There's nothing that needs to be upgraded. You can get those extra percent. This is at the 95%. And I mean the 95% in terms of the tuning is done, the springing is correct, the shock oil that comes with it works just fine. Body, wheels, tires, electronics, go. This has a body, it's going to need wheels, tires, electronics. So the expectations for me of the 10 Pro, having driven multiple VRDs and built multiple VRDs, the expectations for this we have to temper, because otherwise the expectations are going to be irrationally high. We'll be thinking, oh, the 10 Pro, and this is the last time I'll put the boxes on. $429, $429. So the expectations of the 10 Pro are what they are. It has to be as good as a VRD. It can't let me down. It has to do what the VRD do. And I don't know why, but I remain cautious in thought and deed, because, you know, it's fitted with an axial gearbox. It's fitted with axial shocks. We do have experience with both gearboxes and shocks. Not this gearbox specifically, but experience with a number of axial gearboxes. And aside from the OG, aside from the original, well, sort of, let's call it the original, the 10-2 box, the 3-gear, which it's not as if Axial or anyone has innovated. There are arguments over as to who did it first. Let's, for purposes of, and just to keep things simple, let's say, let's give it to Associated, the 3-gear. Let's say it goes all the way back to the original Stealth. So a 3-gear is a 3-gear. You just change the numbers of teeth on one thing or another. That's why we have so many different internal ratios. 2.4, 2.6, Traxxas with the Magnum 272. But they all do the same thing. 3-gear is a 3-gear. The Stealth X is just a kind of a fancy 3-gear. The VFD properly does things differently in terms of mounting location, in terms of everything. So we look at, by we I mean I and us, I look at the VFD very differently. It is a completely different thing. There's not a lot here. This will be great. This will be great. We need a soft start. Did I mention? Yes, I mentioned that we're attempting a little bit different of a format. This is the Canyon build along, so you can pull up your kit, and I need a bag, and just build it right along. You can skip through the parts where I ramble, or you can use the time when I ramble to, you know, make yourself a sandwich or go get something that you need that you don't have. That's how we're going to do that. I tend not to open these. I don't use Black Grease or the included. There's nothing explicitly wrong with the included thread lock. I'm just a real M222 purple guy. I'm a purple guy. Purple is for fasteners under 1/4 inch, aka 7 millimeters and smaller. If you're using blue, and this is pretty much a good approximation, I have, you know, when I talk about the greases and the thread locks, I collect a lot of it. I use CV joint grease. I use this because it has molybdenum in it, and it has the highest amount of molybdenum that you can find in a grease. So this means it in my experience, it doesn't break down as fast, and it stays on the gears longer. And I apply it with Amazon syringes. Get that good pinpoint application. One little bottle of that will last a normal person pretty much forever. But I build too many things, so I go through a bottle of that pretty routinely. My method of choice is a pick, and we just insert thread lock into the holes. It's usually too much, and a bunch of the thread lock splurts out the back of the thread hole of the screw holes. But particularly when we're building carriers, better too much than too little, because I have indeed had one of these come apart, and it makes a sound and a situation that is not immediately recognizable. You don't go, oh, my ring gear is coming off of the carrier. That's not you don't go, oh, it's obvious that that's what's happening. No. You end up trying a bunch of things, and then you end up disassembling pretty much the entire vehicle to find out that the ring is floating side to side, because we use, usually the outputs here are 7mm. So we tend to shim these with 0.1mm thick shims. So when the screws go loose on this and the gear starts walking around, it's definitely moving more than 1/10 of a millimeter. Is that a micrometer? That sounds weird to say. It could be. So, first thing that we appreciate. What do we appreciate? Machined gears. How much do we appreciate them? Whenever we get them. If you have a separate carrier and ring, that's good. There's no time when that isn't good, because that means that is one less thing in general that we have to worry about. They should all be machined, and I'm talking to companies like Element. Except, okay, Traxxas uses sintered mains, and I'm sure that somewhere out there's someone who's broken a Traxxas ring gear or pinion gear. I've not met them, because Traxxas went the other way, which is, we're not going to do machined. You can buy machined. They sell them for like $40 a piece, just like Element does. But because Traxxas is not using helical like this, they're not using the curved. They use straight cut gears. Straight cut gears are just harder to break. These are smoother mesh and more solid engagement, but those big straight cut gears are going to be harder to break. The proof of that is I've broken a lot of ring gears. I for a long time, I lived by a statement of like, oh, you know, rock crawlers, you never break anything. Like, you don't have to worry about it. For the longest time, pretty much the sum total of my breakages was limited to servo horns and wheel pins and things that I regard as disposable anyway. And then you start putting in the hours, and you're putting in more hours and more hours and more hours, and stuff is going to break, stuff is going to fail. It's just, as I would say, it is what it is. That's the way things are. You run things for long enough, even if you don't do anything explicitly dumb. We're not trying to jump them over a levee. This stuff's going to break anyway. You bind a wheel up for just the wrong second. You've had that bind up before, but on this day, that bind up turns out to be the end of that particular part in its total. And more often than not, we're snapping. Oh, okay. So much like Vanquish, this is a rear. This is a front, because this is definitely we gotta link. Yeah, that's got to be a front. Because yeah, let's get it. Yeah. There's where the servo goes. Okay, so that should be at the very least more difficult to mess up. We've got a nice, take note element, take note others. We've got a nice big 5 by 14 by 5 is a good inner pinion bearing carrier size. That's a big boy. That's good, because the only reason you have to buy machine gears for your element is because the pinion bearing is so small that the pinion gets out of adjustment and it shimmies around and then blows everything up. So with a big bearing like that, our worries are diminished, let's say. We just I am an over-greaser by nature. I'm going to put way more grease than what is actually required. I had read a post on Reddit some time back where a guy was like, I put in just enough to cover the tips of the teeth. And I'm like, get out of here with that noise. If there's a thing that we are not explicitly worried about, it's drag being generated by these gears. Put in more grease so that in the future you won't have to grease it again. Because grease lasts a very finite amount of time. So just pack it. Pack it with grease. And the way I tend to do it, it's my own approach to the madness, is the little well. We'll see it when I put the other half together. The little well where the pinion sits, I just flood that with grease, because I want as much grease to stay up against that pinion as possible. And once because there's so much moly in the CV grease, as soon as it rotates a couple times, I mean, it's already super smooth. Yeah, that's all we do. That's all we do. I think it's all. Well, I'm seeing a lot of set screws. Yeah, okay. I do have some incidental experience building a 10 Pro axle. I assembled one entirely out of Amazon parts. That is tight. And we're allowed to bang it against the bench to get it to put it together, because the input is D-shaped. So you can't get it wrong. There's our caster. Caster's built in. So we switch back. Count the tool tip changes. That's an axial fave. And that's part of what I'm so anxious to see as we're moving forward, is, are we going to run into the usual axial thing, which is just like, picture a line. Yeah. So you've got a line, and there's a screw here and a screw here and a screw here. And because of whatever they happen to be going into, Axial says, well, that first hole has an M3 by 14 in it. And then the second one has an M3 by 18 in it. And then the last one has an M3 by 22 in it. Or a 14 and a 16 and an 18. Let's do it that way. It goes 14, 18, 16. So if you're not paying absolute attention, one time when you take that thing apart and go to put it back together, you are going to remove a screw, and then when you go to put that screw back in, you're going to put the 14 where the 16 goes, or you're going to put the 16 where the 18 is supposed to be, and then one of the screws is going to be too long, and you're going to stress and bulge the back of the plastic out. And I say this from experience because I've done it too many times to count, I feel like. So hopefully all three, yes. I had a question, which is, are all three bits, and when I'm referring to bits, I mean these, are all three of these the same? And yes, they are. I had forgotten to remember that from when I built my non-axial 10 Pro axle. I started off as a guy who could take or leave a offset pumpkin, but what has happened over time is a prevalence of gearboxes that basically really need an offset pumpkin. So I'm on board. I like the 10 Pro. Okay, I like an F10 Portal. F10 Portal would be my number one. F10 straight, 10 Pro, AR45 straight, and then at the end, AR45 Portal. I don't know why I don't particularly care for the AR45Ps. I don't feel like I have to make any excuses for it. I just don't like them. And yeah. Oh, okay. I had that put together, and now I have to stop and take a consideration, because this kit does give you two options. It gives you the option of CMS, so we can do chassis mounted servo, or we can do axle mounted servo, because we've got this little guy right here who goes no, who goes on here in a fashion of some sort. And I know that my brain, there should be another brace. Are we being unfair to the 10 Pro if we put, let's assemble the back one and I'll ponder over it while I'm putting the back one together. I think 4-link front is more fair to the 10 Pro. We're probably going to do 4-link front. Also, my set of 10 Pros that I built are CMS. So this will give us two different flavors. Let's think of it that way. So we will indeed pull that screw out yet again. And they give you the parts to do it. So we can't complain about that. Building a front axle, building a rear axle, particularly in this instance, the same exact thing. So building the rear axle is going to go together a lot faster. Now, an advantage, I say that the VRD is a true RTR, in which you build the kit and then you drive it and you're done. The 10 Pro may well be the same, but an advantage to 10 Pro right here out of the box is that you can get any number of hop-up parts for the 10 Pro off of AliExpress and Amazon, and they are not expensive, because I built axles in their entirety out of no plastic parts. There are no plastic parts on the axles I built at all, and they were built quite inexpensively. About $150. The only thing I have to make sure is that I'm picking the right pieces. And we don't look ahead. That would be ridiculous. Oh, the servo goes sideways. Oh yeah, well we gotta have that. We gotta have that. So this points up. That, yeah, okay. I'm jumping ahead in the book, you know, a ways here, because we're supposed to be assembling the C-hubs and whatnot, but so, I am also not opposed to... Is that right? Yeah, that's right. Just got some second guessing going on. I am not opposed to the plastic centers. That's how SSD Diamond Pros are done. These are kind of like a factory Diamond Pro, only the center is not diamond shaped. So hey, come on with me. We put them both on facing the correct direction. So yeah, we only have to pull out one set screw to turn this into axle, servo and axle. If you can do servo and axle, you might as well. Am I wearing this drill out already? I feel like there's some small possibility I'm wearing the drill out already. This is how I do when you realize you've put it together and then you want to change it. Make sure you take both set screws out, otherwise you're never going to be able to pull it apart, which is what I just tried to do. Then we insert this back through the holes and it comes right out. Then, yeah, the prices of not reading ahead, you know what I'm saying? So there's the D facing down, and then that's like it. Okay. Yeah, we were underthinking it and overthinking it at the same time. It has to be servo and axle, or behind axle, because the VRD already gets that, and it's impossible. In my estimation, it's completely impossible to do this and not compare the two. They are kind of, sort of, the same thing, aimed at the same people. It's the same purchasing group. So I'm fully okay with talking about the VRD and the 10 Pro almost interchangeably. Might as well throw a couple screws into the back axle as well, because we're not going completely out of order, I don't think. Missed that for that a little bit. There it is. Yeah, there's a very Diamond Pro feel. I don't have any complaints at all about the fitments of the pieces. Everything is going together fine. Who doesn't like building an axle? Who doesn't like building a whole rig? There's a feeling. There's a sense of I've done a thing. Okay, I gotta pop back to the front now and make sure. 4 set screws and that one. Yes, we can turn the page. Now we will assemble the C-hubs. And yeah, as I said, adding weight to this, if you want to put brass knuckles, if you want to put alloy or brass hubs, they are plentiful. So there is definitely an advantage there. Well, yeah, because the portal axle that comes on a VRD, we have a cheaper option now, but we didn't used to for knuckle weights. And advantage back into the court. This is like a tennis, there's a virtual tennis match going on inside my head between the 10 Pro and the VRD. The F10 axle has an integrated C-hub, for better or worse. These are not, you can't change the caster angle on any of these, but you can change the hub. I mean the C-hub. So that's, I don't care how you try to quantify that. That's an advantage. So the hub, if we can do that right there, that's big, because a lot of companies are going away from it, and they're giving us axles that you get what you get and you don't get upset. So your caster angle is fixed. So some other aftermarket manufacturer can easily make this hub, but then clock it more to give you more front caster. And I will take nearly as much front caster as I can get away with because it enhances your steering angle. Basically causes the tires to lean over like that, which gives the action of more steering angle. Doesn't actually increase the steering angle. It just changes the plane across which the axle is, or the knuckles are turning. So it acts like more steering. It's really easy to do on element axles because they have the little splined ends. And it's impossible to do on most everyone else. TRX4, these, obviously anybody that's molded in. So Capra's, AR45s, F10 portals and straights. Yeah, the number of non-adjustable caster angles well outweighs the number of adjustable ones. Doesn't seem. I mean, it's not bad. It's not an enormous amount of caster. So look at what would be the king. Imagine a straight line going through where the kingpin angle would be. I would have like even more. But let's not second guess until we have an opportunity to get in our first guess. Because the drive is going to tell us more than the bench guessing. We live for the bench guessing. I mean, we're on the bench. What would be the point of not guessing? Yeah, I mean, it's nice. It's a nice axle. Goes together well. There is something though. There is something. I wouldn't even say it's an X factor. Maybe it is the composition of the plastics. But when you build an F10, it feels more. Like you feel like you've built something, and for no other reason than this is the feeling that it presents. Tell me I put a bearing under there. Oh, tell me I put it. Well, it's only 2 screws if I didn't. I'm going to have to take both of these. There's one of them. Those 2 go there after the rear stubs go in. I definitely missed a bearing. Don't miss the bearings under your hubs. It was the right-hand side, so the long side. And wonderfully, I must say, because of removable C-hubs, it took seconds to replace that. Yeah, I have. So this, we're into uncharted territories now. I haven't done axle mounted on a 10-foot axle. It's pretty clean though. I kind of like the transverse mounting. Well, on paper. It's an 8, buttonhead 8. Then we'll get that rear thrown together. Yeah, that's clean, because getting servo on axle on straight axles is tricksy stuff. It's tricksy stuff. Does it say using LP? It doesn't. No. In our booklet, it definitely, that's a full height. Not included. Non inclusa. Non forni. Nicht enthalten. But yeah. Easy. And yeah. It's okay. It's 100% okay. I'm on board. I stuck these in, and these always go in after. They go in like that. Yeah, rear axle, always and forever. Just easier. Lock out. Some screws. There's a bunch of 8s here. There's a lot of leftover 8s. We will mentally address that in the future. It's a bunch of the servo mount. There's servo mount screws. It's thought out. It's thought out. It's pretty well thought out. In my own estimation. Any extras? Not seeing a lot of extras. Some manufacturers have great trust in the end user, and they're like, yeah. You need 12 screws for this step, and you get 12 and no more. Others have little to no faith in us. Oh, there's so many extras. Some kits have so many extras. This one, I'm assuming, in there will, in one of the bags nestled in there, will be a tiny little plastic bag, and it will have just a selection of little, like there'll be one more of these big, what are they, 3x8 set screws? What size are these? 3x5. Okay. 3x5 set screws. There'll be a couple extras of those. There'll be like a, whatever screw is used here in great number. There'll be a couple of those. But we got 6 still over there. And I'm assuming 2 of them. Oh, okay. Okay. I figured, so yeah, 0 extras on this. I figured out where the other 2 went by RTFM. Which is 2 of these 8s, for whatever reason. Strengthening, perhaps. You put those in there. I guess those thread all the way into the axle tube. The axle's got some decent weight to them. There's a rear. And there's a front. And there's the piece we didn't need. And there are the 4 M3x8s that they provide for us, so that should we desire to, we can mount a servo. I will choose a servo primarily, probably at random. I have down here, you know what? We're here. Are we here? We're here. I'm under the bench. Wow. If you take one of these little hefty bins, this size hefty bin, and you put a bunch of brushed motors in it, here is something that will surprise no one. It gets heavy. Proper heavy. I have the servo in my mind. I have the well, I'm certain. Okay, let's do this. I have the servo in my mind. I have the servo in this bin. There it is. Let's throw a little RS400 action at it. I just saw the next page of the manual. Spoilers to myself. I just saw the next page of the manual, and it's the shock building, and they do have threaded bottom retainers, so that's helpful. That's less bad. Oh yeah. Yeah, low pro, not explicitly required or stated by the manual, but I mean, you probably should do. Probably should do. We are going to be using a Fusion SE for this build because I happen to have one. A Fusion is probably what I would be running anyway. And isn't there that warm feeling of fuzz inside when you have built the thing as instructed by the book about the thing? And what do we have left over? Nothing. We have nothing left over. We have the piece that is for CMS. That's it. Then we do this. Put that guy back in his hole. Boop. Throw that down there. And that, as they say, is that. Bag A. All done. That gets us... Oh, that gets us 12 pages through the manual. You know what that is? That's pretty okay. Next up, you will see a shock, and then I will build the other ones quietly by myself. Just a solitary tear rolling down my cheek because I'm being forced to build shocks again. And at some point, yeah, very early on in the some point, I'm going to have to get those E-clips onto there, and these are my hands. So it's super fun. It's super fun. I love that part. I think it's going to be good. I am so anxious to see this up against VRD, and we don't have a VRD here per se. We have sort of, so that'll be the best that we can do for the time being. If you are like I am, plagued by the time being, we have this gentleman who is an approximation of a stance / VRD. Ooh, hair. Ooh. But he's a Zoku chassis and he's a mullet, and he's got weight added. So if the 10 Pro can come out and get into the neighborhood, it's doing something. Do I wish I had a stock VRD on hand? Well, yeah, I do. But we will do what we need to do. Then we're going to build those shocks. It is just a couple pages. It is about 5 pages to build the gearbox, which is an absolutely bonkers looking gearbox when it's done. That is, what is that even? And it very axial in like, that's one step. I mean, guys, do I have a VRD book? So I don't want to say that it's something akin to hand holding, but here's the first step to building the gearbox for the 10 Pro. And when you're building a VRD, there's where you put the front of it together, and then we get the pinion and the motor, and then we put together the front section of the gearbox, and then we put together the overdrive section of the gearbox, and we put it all together, and then we're mounting it in the chassis. And it's like the same number of pages. Like, this one starts on page 13, bag D, and runs through page 16, where it's mounted. And this one starts on page 13 of bag C, and runs through page 16 of bag C. It just, like, don't do that. There's too many times where you got to go check. But that's nothing to do with the 10 Pro and everything. That's just the way Axial do. That's just how they do. So we've got these. Next up we'll have, boxes right about her. Next up we'll have these. And we'll have these. That's next time. That's done for this time. Canyon Build Along. Thanks for joining me, air nailers outside all day. I'll see you in the next one, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. In between now and when we meet again, please, one and all, do your very best. Have a good one, everybody. We'll see you next time. We're going to do some more building. Who doesn't love building? I love it. That's a heavy bag. Shocks and Gearbox, episode 2, coming real soon.